We're joined today by Keith Coughlan, Executive Chairman of European Metals. Keith, thanks for your time.
No problem, David.
You've just announced a simplified flow sheet and a simplified extraction process. What does it mean and why is that so important?
Well, it means a few things. It means that we can produce the battery-grade lithium hydroxide and battery-grade lithium carbonate that we previously produced, but cheaper, cleaner, easier, simpler, all of those things. So the new flow sheet still allows us to produce both of these chemicals at a very high level of purity. It also allows us to produce a couple of other lithium chemicals that could be very interesting, but we can do it with a projected CapEx saving of around 10 to 20% and a projected OpEx saving of about the same quantum. And it also helps with our ESG credentials, which are already very good. So it's a win everywhere in this flow sheet for us.
Importantly, this isn't a theory or an idea. This flow sheet's been tested and you've got the results that you wanted.
Correct. We've been running with this flow sheet for almost 12 months now with various adaptations along the way, of course. But we conducted a series of lock cycle tests last month, the last of which was in about the middle of last month and proved, they were all successful. The final one proved exactly what we wanted it to do. So it's an adaptation of the previous flow sheet, but as I say, much more simple, much cleaner.
As you say, simple, cleaner, but better results.
Correct. So it's just the way that the metallurgists, the guys have come up with different ways of doing the things that they were already doing in the flow sheet in such a way that just gives us better results earlier in the flow sheet. It means we can do away with some of the equipment, which is obviously where the CapEx savings come from. But it also gave us purer product earlier, which is an added bonus.
A biggest product suite, what do you think this means for offtake discussions?
So what we're seeing emerging in the lithium market, which is a very dynamic space, clearly. We had a situation where way back when everyone only wanted to talk about lithium carbonate and then everyone only wanted to talk about lithium hydroxide. Recently, we're seeing a move back towards carbonate for LFP batteries, lithium iron phosphate batteries. Carbon is considered a better precursor chemical. However, we believe that even better than carbonate for this purpose is lithium phosphate. So we went about seeing whether we could produce a high purity lithium phosphate, which we can, but we can also produce a very high purity lithium sulfate, and there's definitely a market for that as well. Now, the interesting thing is that it will become a trade-off at what price you can sell, for example, lithium hydroxide for, versus what price you might be able to sell lithium sulfate or lithium phosphate. And it may not be the highest grade chemical, the highest grade product that gives us the best economics on the project.
And as you say, strong ESG benefits?
Exactly. So we have less equipment, less energy, less steps in the process. So all of that enhances what's already a very strong set of ESG credentials.
In terms of the macro point of view, the EU is clearly picking up the pace when it comes to its investment in strategic metals and securing strategic metals. How have you seen that journey and the pace at which it's increasing?
Well, it's definitely ramping up. We've seen various pieces of formal legislation, the European Critical Raw Materials Act, for example, but also a great deal of new dialogue and new commentary on the issue from EU politicians, but also politicians from various EU member states. And when we saw President Biden's statement of 2 weeks ago now and the grant of something like $2.8 billion directly to small developing lithium projects, very much like our own, it just makes everything much closer to reality that we're going to see this sort of support come out of the EU in the short term.
So from here, a pilot program commencing in Q4 into samples being produced in Q1. Why are those samples so important?
Well, off-takers still want to have a qualification period. They still want to see that your product is appropriate specifically for their product, for their cathode material, for example. So at some stage you do have to produce samples and give them to these people. And the sooner you can do it, the better, I think. It gives you greater certainty in your offtake, allows you to write a stronger offtake agreement with the right sort of people.
Where to from here? Pilot program, samples being produced. What's the next substantive piece of work that investors should be focused on?
We will announce shortly, probably within the next 2 weeks, the DFS timeline. It's been adapted obviously given the new flow sheet, but we'll be able to bring investors up to speed on that. And that also helps us lead into formal discussions on financing for the project and on offtake agreements. So just speeding up that process so that we can start getting some clarity out there. You know, the idea is when we do deliver that DFS next year and our final investment decision, we already have everything else lined up so the project can move ahead as quickly as possible.
Simpler flow sheet, a clear path forward, exciting times for European Metals and its shareholders. Keith, thanks for your time.
Thank you, David.